That hurt. More verticality. Recording in progress. All right. Welcome to the Straight Red Card. Today on today's show, we have the one and only, and it's been 8 or 9 years since we've had him on the show. It's been that long. I mean, it's not his fault. We left for 6 years. So, obviously we haven't had the ability to have him on the show, but we do today have the one and only, the big time writer for big soccer for, I don't know, seems like forever. That is Mr. Bill Archer. Bill, welcome back to the show.
Guys, long time no whatever the hell this is. Good to be here.
Well, it's a little different now, Bill, as we mentioned in the pre show that we can swear, we can say whatever we want now, and that's great. Not that we couldn't back then, but I mean, back then the show was pretty much only a guest show. So, we didn't want to be rude in front of our guests, but, we're old now and we don't really care as much. How about you?
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, I don't recall, restraint ever being one of my hallmarks, but sure, it's,
Well, that's true. I think one of the only reason Grant Wahl came on our show was because you had some criticism of him back in the days, way back in the days. Is that true,
well,
Brett? Am I remembering
Grant? Well, Grant was Grant. I mean, yeah, and I'm sure you guys recall him. Other people may not, but I cut my teeth really writing about CONCACAF and all the crap with Jack Warner and Chuck Blazer and all that stuff. And it was the corruption was awful, And one of the things that I constantly said was that there were people like Grant Wahl who I thought, and this sounds a little serious, but I thought they really had a professional obligation to be writing. They knew this stuff. They knew it every bit as. Meanwhile, there was some idiot sitting at a desk in Pennsylvania. I didn't know a tenth as much as Grant Wahl did, and he wouldn't say a word about it.
Yeah.
And so about the 10th time. About the 10th time that I just beat the living crap out of him on Big Soccer, he called me at home. I'm still not sure where he got my phone number. And
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Talk to all of his CONCACAF buddies.
And he said, yeah, sure. And he said, I think the problem here is that you don't understand the realities of being a sports writer, about being in journalism. And I said, no, Grant, I think I understand them quite well. The problem is you're trying to protect your sources. You're not trying to protect your free tickets. You're trying to protect, and it's true. It's exactly what he was doing.
Right. And
we had a long talk, and we talked about his wife and my wife and whatever. And we ended it quite, no one yelled at anybody. And we got off the phone. And about a week later, I beat up on it. I didn't talk about the conversation, but I beat up on him again. And for the same thing. And he called me again. And he said, well, you're being a little two-faced. I said, no, Grant, I never said, I'm glad we had a conversation. You can call me anytime, but my point is the same and it hasn't changed. But Grant was a good writer and is a good writer, but he, like everybody else, nobody else is, the stuff going on with FIFA and CONCACAF now, and nobody's writing about it.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that. But before we move off Grant, the odd thing is the other day, he just came out and said that there are no access issues with U.S. soccer. And I found that to be very false.
No blackballing.
Yeah, that's baloney.
Yeah, that's just baloney. I mean, didn't you lose your press pass too at some point for criticism of U.S. soccer?
Well, my press credentials were always on a case-by-case basis. I never had a carte blanche. I never had here's your pass. This is good for until you screw up. I always had to apply. and they never said no until once, and then at some point they started saying no,
Right.
Which was okay.
Yeah, you never walked into a presser and just said, "Do you know who I am?"
I don't think. Yeah, I don't think that ever happened.
No, but I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. At MLS Cup, this was of course not a US game, but at MLS Cup in 2008, of course I'm a Crew fan. I make no secret of that, and
nobody's perfect.
but I had credentials from no, exactly, and I had press credentials from USSF or from MLS and big soccer, and Jesse had arranged it, and I started walking into the press box at the stadium, and I had a Crew jersey on, and I had a beer in my hand, and they, excuse, I didn't know this. I'm not a journalist. I don't know this stuff. Somebody stopped me and they said, you can't drink in the press box, and you can't cheer, and you can't cheer for a team. You have to. And I said, wait a minute. I flew 3,000 miles from Ohio to watch my team play in MLS Cup, and you're telling me I can't cheer and I can't have a beer? That's ridiculous. And I left and I never went back.
I thought all the media is pretty dry anyway, so it makes sense.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you ripped off your shirt and downed the beer. That would have been appropriate.
No,
okay.
No, I mean, I considered it, but I said, well, and
there you are.
And I like beer,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, speaking of those
old
days,
here.
There you are. Yeah. Speaking of those old days too, I can remember I started a group with a bunch of like Grant Wahl, Eric Ronaldo, you, Dan, Brett. It was like 16 people. And I had no idea when I started the group on Facebook that this could cause an issue, because one of the people I included was Stephen Cohen. And you guys just went at it for like a day straight.
What an asshole. I'm glad you gave me permission to, use whatever language came to mind, because Stephen Cohen was the biggest asshole in the world. That's just incredible.
Yeah, that was probably a bad idea on our part. But again, another guy that came on our show because, he wanted to say his piece on what you had to say about him. And so we got two guests, Grant Wahl and Stephen Cohen, on our show just because they wanted to dispute you. Yes. So
made for great content. Yeah, absolutely. We pulled up our popcorn. We just
that's really
watched.
I mean, it was eight years ago, so it's been a long time. So what are you doing these days?
Been a while.
What are you up to?
Well, I throw another log on the fire and play with my dog mostly.
Yeah.
I was going to go back. I even considered going back to writing, because there's some stuff that I really wanted to say and talk about. I got a little burned out on it, and I really wanted to take a break, and I did take a break, and I was going to get back into it, and I wasn't able to find a platform that I really liked, and I went back. I had sort of a disagreement. It's a long story. I won't get into it, but the new owners of Big Soccer didn't like something that I wrote, and they yanked my article, and that really pissed me off. And I said, fine, I give up. And so I'm still contemplating writing if I can find the right. I don't want to run a website. I don't want to, have a blog. I would take a space somewhere, but I don't really want the day-to-day responsibility of that. I really don't. I've been there and done.
You could do a Substack thing. You could do like a Substack thing.
Yeah.
Have you ever considered that? That's where a lot of guys are going now.
Yeah,
write articles.
Well, like I said, I'm looking into that, because there really are some things that I think are getting ignored, and I think people would be fascinated. I talked about CONCACAF. There's how many people know that the president of the Haitian Federation has been suspended by FIFA because he used the National Training Center for preteen girls as a sex club, and was passing these girls around like party favors. And no, it's horrible. It's just horrible stuff going on. And everybody knows it. It's it's common knowledge, and no one will write about it because no one wants to rock the boat.
Well, that brings me to rocking the boat, because that article that you were talking about, I think that you wrote about CONCACAF and FIFA. I read it today because it's up there on Big Soccer, because you had to repost it. Is that the one they took down?
Yes. But yes, make a long story short, I had a line in it. I said, because I was talking about FIFA, and it's it's in Switzerland, and all the people who run it are Swiss and whatever. And I said, I quoted Joseph Stalin, of all people, who once told FDR that the Swiss were swine. And it's how long ago was World War II? These people are all dead. It's old, it's tired, whatever. And the piece was up for a day. And it got taken down. And it took me 2 weeks to find out that whoever it is secretly runs the site, and I still don't know who it is, had taken it down because she said that line was too political.
What?
Joseph Stalin telling FDR that the Swiss were swine was too political for Big Soccer. And I said, well, that's fine. I can't write for these people anymore. But I did post it because people kept emailing me going, what happened?
I mean, they are all political figures, so I guess there's some kind of a point there. I guess.
They're also dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that's just an issue in general, which is why this is a great platform. YouTube, at least for us so far, has been good. As long as I tell them there's intermittent cursing on the show, they're like, fine, that's fine.
Thank goodness they don't actually listen to our show.
And you're monetized. So blah, there it is. Well, I don't know if they listen to it or not, but they have their little bots that track cuss words. So there's that. And if you say so many and blah, blah, blah. But in your article, you talked about the whole evolution of the Trinidad and Tobago Federation and how fucked up that is. And that was just 2 years ago. And maybe you can give us a summary of what's going on there, because it doesn't seem like it's getting much better.
Well, no, that one is still that way. FIFA took over the organization because they should have done it long before, because it was totally out of control. And then they held a really bogus election, and they elected a guy who had no business running anything, and all the money disappeared. And they were supposed to build this. It was another, we're going to build a training center. That's a big sinkhole for FIFA money, and it just went on and on and on. And FIFA went up, took over the organization, and they sued to stop them. But what happens is all these small federations are able to operate only because of FIFA money. FIFA now gives every federation on earth gets $1 million a year from FIFA, which to put that in perspective, when Sepp Blatter was running FIFA back in the early part of the last decade, everybody got $100,000. And then when he was reelected, part of his program was that everybody got $250,000 a year, and they thought that was great, and they voted for Sepp. And when Gianni Infantino took over in 2016, he upped it to $1 million. That was part of how he got elected. So now all these places like St. Martin and Fiji and American Samoa have got like 10 guys and a bag of balls. They don't have a team. They don't have anything. They're 211 FIFA countries, and they all get $1 million a year. Now, come on, where is this money going? What are they doing with it? Like, it's ridiculous. And that goes to the heart of why they're pushing so hard for the World Cup every 2 years now, which is not going to happen, thank God. But that's why they're pushing. He's still pushing for it because they got to have more money. They, and all the small countries say, look, if we get $1 million a year with a World Cup every 4 years, we'll probably get $2 million a year if we have a World Cup every 2 years. And it's awful, it's scandalous, and it's all about the money. And oh, by the way, that this is something else that people aren't writing about. Gianni Infantino has left Zurich, where FIFA headquarters is. He's under indictment for a bunch of criminal crap. He got really fond of flying his family around on FIFA's dime in private planes. And he has lived for the last 6 months in Qatar. Qatar has given him a house. Yes.
Oh my
Gianni
God.
Infantino now lives in Qatar full time. He doesn't go anywhere else.
Does he oversee the slave labor?
And I mean, yes, probably he's out there every
10 more
day,
over there. 10 more over there. Come on, guys.
Yeah, no, and but that's he is totally in their pocket and likely to remain there. But it's Europe and South America don't like him and will never like him. Will never go along with anything. But he's doing the same thing Jack Warner did for years. Jack Warner had 35 votes in his pocket in CONCACAF, and there was nothing you could do about it. Yeah. And Gianni Infantino has all of Africa and all of Asia and all the Middle East. He's got no support in Europe, so he's left Europe. He's given up on it.
So it's
a mess.
It's so weird because I mean, we had septic blabber for a long time, and we thought we were going to
old Steppy. I miss him so much.
I mean, is this really an improvement? I mean, it doesn't seem like, like you said, the money's being used for underage drinking parties and sex, and in some cases, I mean, nothing's really got better, has it?
No. What they have done is they've eliminated some of the under the table stuff.
Yeah.
Like they used to have FIFA Congress, and people literally would line up outside the door, and you'd go in and get handed an envelope with $50,000, and it was Adidas was financing, because Adidas was like Stepladder, and they were just paying everybody off with envelopes. Literally, Saddam Hussein, I think it was Uday Hussein, was their federation rep, and he'd stand in line and get his envelope with $100,000 or $50,000 or whatever. Muammar Gaddafi's son. I mean, all these third world criminals are literally lined up at a door, collecting money, and that sort of thing seems to have been eliminated. But it's been eliminated because they're now above board, sending everybody $1 million a year. Yeah. And they don't have anything to do with $1 million. I always say that, the U.S. and Mexico and England and Germany and even Brazil and countries like that, it's a nice chunk of change. But they send somebody down to the bank and they throw it into a checking account. It's no big deal. For about 2/3 of the countries, 2/3 of the federations, that's their whole budget. That's all their money. And they pay themselves salaries, and they lease cars, and they have, phones and airfare and the whole thing. So that, it's moved from underground to above board now.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I mean, some of my childhood heroes like Beckenbauer and Platini got wrapped up in some of that crap. But what did you think about the U.S. Justice Department when it did go? Finally, it was the one that went after FIFA. And I mean, why did it take us?
Well, it's because we were able to. You notice that the people who got arrested, the people who were indicted, were all from CONCACAF and South America. There's so much corruption in Africa, it's awful, but that money doesn't get moved through the U.S., so the U.S. is powerless. But somebody like Jack Warner was stashing money in the U.S. In fact, he had his son in Miami taking this money and buying property, and in fact, there was I used to have a picture of the entire CONMEBOL board of directors 14 guys from all the different countries in South America, and there were people who were uncountable. There was a group photo taken in 2014, and by 2018, 13 of those 14 people were either indicted, in jail, or on house arrest. And the only reason the 14th person wasn't under any of those things is because he was dead. So the entire but that was because they were they did business in the United States, and anybody, that we were able to use our banking laws to crack down on them. They were very foolish, and part of it had to do with Chuck Blazer, and I don't criticize Chuck. I kind of like Chuck, as a matter of fact. Chuck did a lot of shady things, but Chuck never screwed over the United States, ever.
He was
He
just
never
trying to
took a dime of America.
go ahead, Brett.
Not only that, but I mean, Chuck was nice enough one day a year to deliver presents to every kid around the world. I mean,
well,
he's got some positives there. Come on.
And he loved
yes, indeed.
he loved his birds too. He really loved his birds. He had a big cage of birds. Remember that?
He had a macaw, a huge macaw, scarlet macaw, and as a matter of fact, I talked to him. I never told anybody this before. I used to talk to him on the phone number, so anybody could call Chuck. Chuck can answer the phone from anybody. And I used to call him. He was very polite to me. He knew exactly who I was, and in fact, I felt terrible once. I wrote a piece about him, and I mentioned his girlfriend, Marilyn Blanks. You can look her up. Marilyn Blanks was a very minor actress. She was on soap operas, and she did some commercials and stuff. Marilyn was his living girlfriend, and I referred to her in an article as being milfy. And I talked to Chuck a month or so later, and I called him some questions, and he would never give you any dirt, but he'd give you some background of FIFA laws and stuff. Very good with that sort of thing. And he said, "Oh, by the way, I wanted to tell you that Mary Lynn saw that article, saw that you called her a MILF, and she laughed and laughed and laughed."
Good.
So he had a sense of humor. He had a sense of humor about this stuff.
But in many ways, wasn't he just playing the game though? Because everybody was playing the game, and if he didn't play the game too, then we would have maybe not even got, I don't know, 94. I don't know, but he was playing the game like everybody else.
Well, that was sure. Absolutely, he was. And I always tell people about Chuck. He never took. There is no evidence whatsoever that he ever took a bribe for anything. He decided that he had this deal with CONCACAF that he got 10% of everything. So he felt that included getting 10% of Jack Warner's bribes. And so this man was literally taking a commission on Jack Warner's bribes. It's astonishing.
I heard when they arrested him, his macaw said, "Show me the money. Show me the money."
Oh, I was gonna tell you, if you when you that's where it came from. When you called him, that the bird would scream in the background. You could barely hear the conversation because this bird was screaming, just ear piercing, screaming, screeching. Like the hounds of hell are in his.
That might have been his game plan. So that way people always hang up like, Jack, we'll just talk later, okay?
That bird is still around. The bird is still around.
Oh God, who's taking care of the bird?
Well, there used to be a guy who worked for CONCACAF who took care of Chuck's bird when he was out of town, and when Chuck was dying of colon cancer in New Jersey, he took it home with him, and then he agreed to keep him, and so he had a good home because Chuck was very sick for a very long time, and the guy took him home with him, and he's still there. As far as I know.
Okay. Well, that's
he and the bird got along.
That's good news. I just want to know the bird's okay. And I don't wish death on anybody from colon cancer. So that's horrible.
Yeah.
And I hope,
No, certainly not.
yeah.
I mean, and Derek watched a documentary about 1800s England vets that used to cook birds. So
All right.
that's a throwback to an old joke that was occurring. But
I don't know if Bill's in on these inside jokes, Brett. I don't know if that's going to work.
There was a dead silent for about 5 seconds. There, I was like, well, that didn't pan out.
So
yeah, we all have those, though. You just move on.
Yeah. So I also wanted to say we were using a photo of for new people who don't know Bill Archer, who's a legend in the big soccer world. He used to use a photo of himself as a smoking monkey. So the fact that we're using a photo of Bill as a smoking monkey does not mean we are making fun of him. That's just the only photo anybody has of Bill. And apparently it could be him. I don't know. Are you still smoking, Bill?
I was going to say, how do you know that's not really me? I don't.
I mean, I don't know. That's the question, right? But it's going to have to work for now because
frightening. It's frightening, isn't it?
I mean,
there's still a legion of Canadians out searching for you, aren't there?
Sure, they're Canadians. I used to say I think my picture was in every border crossing post as you go through it. It's right next to the window. No, that's not him. No, that's not him.
Well, that's kind of funny because even Tactical Manager now refers to them as rude Canadians because he gets a lot of heat on the Twitter sphere. That hurt.